This is the Milestone 1 presentation for Team High, Healthcare in AI, for the research on AI in healthcare for medical students on first principle thinking. Our team member is Feng Wang and me, Zhongjie Tan. Let's move on to the main presentation slides. The brief summary of the survey content. So our survey contains 10 questions. Among these 10 questions, we categorize them into 3 parts. The first part is background-related questions, where we ask the survey takers their gender, their age, and their educational level. The second part is related to AI in healthcare acceptance. One example questions in this part would be, will you accept your potential medical care from an AI machine? What is the score for acceptance, where the scores varies from 1 to 10? The third part is related to AI in healthcare preference. One of the questions in this part is, in the following area of medical practices, which one do you think you have the highest acceptance rate if the result is provided by an AI machine? The choices of these questions amount from preventative diagnosis or non-life-threatening disease diagnosis or cancer diagnosis. So the first part of the question, the background questions, which will gain valuable information from the survey taker's background in order to better analyze the result from the latter parts, which is the AI in healthcare acceptance and the AI in healthcare preference questions. We know that the acceptance and preference in AI in healthcare varies from one background to the other. Setting the tone in the first part of the survey by asking the survey taker the background would be a good start. Let's move on to the next slide. Now we talk about the selection logic principles. So we design our survey based on 2 principles. The first one is from general to specific. This principle can be visualized in the question design in the second category, specifically AI in healthcare acceptance. So the first question is related to acceptance of AI diagnosis in general, where the second question followed by choice between AI diagnosis and human diagnosis, where we explicitly linked the AI diagnosis to the human diagnosis where people are more familiar with in the current situation. And the final questions in this part related to the acceptance with AI diagnosis with or without doctor's interpretation. You can see that the question designs are more specific from one to the other as we go deeper into the survey. The second design principle, or selection logic, is from concrete to abstract. This principle can be visualized in the category design ordering, where the second category focuses on questions foster a concrete comparison of AI diagnosis against human doctor's diagnosis. And the third category is more abstract, in the sense that the questions are based on hypothetical assumptions that AI diagnosis is already provided and to explore the format or type of the diagnosis preferred by the patients. We believe that putting the questions that are more concrete in the first place would allow the survey takers to think more about the concept of AI in healthcare so that they will be more ready to take the questions that are more abstract in nature in the latter part of the survey. Let's move on to the next slide. So in this slide, we'll discuss some of the challenges we have encountered in our team during the survey design phase, which is the last 3 weeks that we are working on. The first challenge we want to talk about here is the ordering. So ordering the questions is a pretty difficult task because we as a team first come up with the survey questions by brainstorming all the questions we can think about during our research into the existing literature. So the orders are definitely not the best when we come up with these questions. And we want to make the questions in an order such that it makes sense to the survey takers and to make the people that taking the survey more comfortable to finish the survey. The second challenge we have encountered is the survey length. So we want to reduce the survey length to a certain level that makes more sense to the survey takers. For example, we want to avoid the survey takers to turn around and exit in the midpoint of the survey because they think the survey is too long, or we also don't want them to rush to the end of the survey because it is too long. So we are setting a goal to keep the survey less than 10 questions. In this case, we definitely need to remove questions that are not as essential as the others. How we overcome those challenges? For the ordering question, we actually take a step back to come up with the principles of the survey design. Once those principles, which are the 2 principles that I discussed in the previous slide, from concrete to abstract and from general to specific. Once we have come up with these 2 principles, it is much more clear for us to order the questions. And to resolve the survey length reduction challenge, we actually rely on the pilot testing, which I'll discuss in the next slide. So in this slide, we discuss the pilot testing and the revision of the survey. By pilot testing, what we mean is that we sent the preliminary version, which we call the pilot testing version, to 10 of our friends with different backgrounds. They gave us feedback and the survey is revised based on their feedback comments. So let me talk about some of the revisions that are coming from the pilot testing. So the redundancy check is one of the revisions we have done. There are some similar questions in surveys that are pointed out by our survey takers in the pilot testing phase, and we have removed those questions to avoid any redundancy. And we have revised some of the open-ended questions to closed-ended questions. For example, in the original design of the age question, instead of putting a place where it allows the survey takers to fill in the blank, we actually decided to make a range of age in the choices of the selection so that the survey takers can just tick the relevant box according to their ages. Another example is the medical practice question that we encountered, and we actually put an example in the first slide. In this medical practice questions, instead of have an open-ended choice, which makes the survey takers to fill in what kind of medical practice or what area of the medical practice will they think they will have the highest acceptance rate if the result is provided by an AI machine, we actually explicitly list 3 categories, which is the preventative diagnosis, the non-life-threatening disease diagnosis, and the cancer diagnosis. So in this case, we will be more focused on these 3 categories and have the result more consistent in this case and more condensed in this case. So I believe that's the end of the slide and the presentation. Thank you.